one shot at this guy. Okay, a little left. Okay, now factor in the spin. No. God damn it, man. Okay, what direction are we? East, west, north, south, northeast? Factor in everything. We need to know exactly the direction, the spin of the earth, and how to combat it, or else we're gonna miss. There's no spin of the earth. Take the shot, retard. But that would mean Neil deGrasse Tyson is wrong, and you miss every single shot when we do this. If we miss this shot, our location will be blown. We've been here for 4 days shitting in little cans. Tell me the spin of the earth. Like, okay, down to the left 16 inches. No. They saw us. I missed the shot. I guess it was spinning a little faster than I thought. Oh. Globe, Earth, sniper. I can see the mirage. No, that's the target. Must be a mirage. Well, I've done the calculations. 8 inches per mile squared. I wouldn't be able to see him. It's a mirage. I'm not taking the shot. It's him! Like, every sniper just shoots people. That's a fucking mirage. That means Neil deGrasse Tyson, the bike thief with the answers, is somehow misleading me. Globe, Earth, sniper. Okay, if you factor in the curve. This is clearly a mirage.
Welcome back, everyone. I'm going to do something a little different and put together some of the best globe proofs to show the mainstream what we are looking at, because the mainstream continues to tell the exact same copy and paste narrative about the denial of science and the proofs of the globe that we all believed in and loved and thought were true 100%. The articles talk about millions of people giving up their worldview, and that they are usually all either Catholics, evangelical Christians, relatively low levels of education, paranoid. The list goes on. It's the same types of descriptions, and then they go on to say things like this, that they give little credit to photographs from space or scientists' answers about gravity, Foucault's pendulum, 2 millennia of astronomical observations. So that's what the narrative is, and it's continued to be that. The articles never show what these people are seeing that makes them change, and it's not an overnight process. Some people take a year, some people take longer. Some people like me won't even look into it unless there is some sort of divine intervention or miracles that happen to make them ask questions as to what's going on and what's being hidden. Because for me personally, it took several miracles to humble me enough to even ask questions like, what else is this world doing to hide the fact that we have a loving Father? What could they be doing to change truth so that people don't experience what I was experiencing? And the answers blew my mind. I had no clue that something as innocent as this little globe here could be used as a tool of deception. It seems ridiculous, I understand that, but it's not. This Earth that was put in motion at speeds that I never really thought of or imagined is part of a model that is relatively new in its existence, and its purpose is a lot more sinister than I thought, but I'm not going to get into that for this first part of the video. If it happens later on, I don't apologize. That's probably the most important thing to know, is why they would create this in the first place. But I'm going to do what I said and look at the best proofs that there is curvature and that the Earth is in motion. At the speeds that they say it is, we should be able to detect something from where we are on this spherical object, if it is indeed spherical. So let's get started with looking at the very best proofs that the Earth is curved, because those images should exist, and guess what? There are some that do exist, and we do not ignore them. As looking into this, they say we deny stuff from space agencies. We don't deny everything. We just know that they have lied to us many times, and they've been caught doing so. So we do discredit a lot of the stuff that they tell us to be fact when it comes to what we live on. But I'm not going to deny it. I will use it to show you how it actually proves the opposite of what they say. I took a screenshot of these wind turbines that appear to be hidden behind curvature. And you can see that the one that is nearest the viewer, there is more of it showing, and the ones that are further are hidden quite a bit. Even the propellers are dipping down behind the curve. That is exactly what I would have thought seeing this, and it's pretty convincing to your average person that that's curvature causing you to see this phenomena. But thankfully, some researchers took some repeated observations, and not only did they see curve like this vanishing at different times, they noticed that things weren't adding up with how objects that are closer to us were smaller than the objects that were further, even though in reality they are the exact same size. This proves that there is magnification going on, and most of us, including me, were not aware that such magnification was happening to the degree that it is, nor what it would do over a flat surface if it was indeed magnifying. And what would be magnifying to this degree? We know there's water in the air, but how do those water droplets do this? It's because these water droplets in the air act like a lens, and they do a good job of magnifying distant objects. And when you repeat this over a flat surface with a lens that replicates this effect, you can see here that the exact same phenomenon happens, and you have objects seemingly vanishing over a curve just like this. Buildings, the sun will set, all of these things happen, and as you can see here, when there's less moisture in the air, things don't magnify as great, and even sunsets look a bit different. It's one of the reasons we love going to the beach, because that sun as it's setting looks so large, and you can actually stare directly at it because that water filters out light, similar to when you go down into the ocean. We can't study the bottom of the Marianas Trench from the surface because light will not reach the bottom. You have to send something down there that can shine its own light and have cameras to see the bottom. If you've ever gone scuba diving, you've probably encountered that problem. Once you go below a certain amount of feet, it gets darker and darker till eventually you can no longer see the surface or the sun that is directly above you. That's what happens here. That's how the sun goes down, and it's repeatable and something we can experiment with on a smaller scale. It's not easy, but you can definitely repeat that on a small scale with water or a magnifying lens of your choice and get the same results. Now that we've got that out of the way, let's look at some of the proof that we have that goes directly against such observations where we see too far and we are told that it is a mirage. And a mirage, which most people are aware, is actually an optical illusion that's caused by atmospheric conditions, especially the appearance of a sheet of water in a desert or on a hot road, caused by the refraction of light from the sky by heated air. You can see here it looks like the sky is just flowing right directly into the street. That's not what happens. It's a mirroring effect, and you can see it here where this ship appears to be upside down. This is a mirage. This right here is actually the ship. It's not a mirage. The horizon is now gone, and there is a false horizon that is closer to the viewer right here. This is not the real horizon. The horizon will change, rise, and fall due to the amount of water in the air. You can see that with time lapse, where a shoreline will vanish behind what looks to be a curve, and then it'll appear again. Even the distant mountains will drop as the curve rises. Some really cool things that all have to do with water in the air. The surface of the water is not waving like a flag. It just appears to be as these moisture levels change. That's why it takes repeated observations, and people have done that. People in this community have gone out there, thought they found curve, but came back again and saw that it was missing, and even entire lighthouses can vanish behind this curve. And when conditions are better and drier, the lighthouse appears again, as it should if there were no curvature. Now, that's not it. There are far more proofs that we're going to get into and that counteract this, and it's the long distance photos where we now know they are not a mirage, because when we look at them, they are right side up and they are from distances that shouldn't be possible on a globe at their current elevation. And elevation is key because that changes the math on the curve calculator. When you put in the elevation of 1 foot high, you should have a horizon that's a little over a mile away. But we can see things that are over 9 miles away, and the horizon is even further than that. This is not a mirage, and you can tell that it's not as magnified as the wind turbines because this oil rig looks smaller than the one that's closer. If you have the opposite effect and this one looks larger, then you're going to start seeing that magnification lensing effect come into place, and there will be a curve here. You could definitely come back on a different day when this one looks larger and see that there is an illusion of curve. It's repeatable. You guys can do this yourself. Don't just take the very first image you see as proof of anything. Continue the investigation. And now let's look at some really long distance things that we should not be able to see, like the old famous world record long distance photo where there was over a half mile of curve missing. And this website was down for a little while. I was afraid it would never come back, but thankfully it did. And it seems to be back and better than it was before. They were just making some upgrades. Did get a little nervous because all the videos we were putting out there, many of them are getting deleted. But this picture is back up again so you guys can find it. I will leave it linked in the description. But there was over a half mile of curve. And you can see there are mountains in the foreground in front of it. But you can see the right side up, not a mirage image of this mountain in the distance. We are told by people when we see stuff like this that it's because the curve calculator is off, and I agree. The curve calculator does not account for things like this. Objects in between the viewer and the distant mountain range. There are obviously little mountain ranges there, but if you look, this mountain range being in the middle would cause our point of view to be much higher than the half mile of missing curve. It would be probably a couple miles higher, but it's not. We're still able to see the peak of the mountain because the curvature is not there. In order for this mountain to rise up a half mile, that would take a lot of bending of light and a really cool mirage that would not be photorealistic whatsoever. It would be really stretched and skewed, but it looks similar to the image we see here, where there was a mountain that was supposed to be hidden by 10,240 feet, and the mountain's elevation itself was only 9,150 feet. Doesn't seem like a big jump, but if you were to put the Empire State Building there, the curve should be near the top of it. That's a lot of curve that's missing because when you look at this image again, you can see a photorealistic image here of that mountain. There's what it looks like when you're closer up. There's definitely some curved land in front of it that should also be obscuring it, and it is, just a little bit, like it would if you were closer to it. But since these pictures were taken, we have had a lot of brilliant and talented researchers filming things and continuing to film things that we shouldn't see, like this image here of the Hudson Bay that was filmed at a distance of 1,200 miles. This is from a plane window, and yes, you are seeing really far because you are above a lot of that dense atmosphere or atmosphere. You're really high up there, so you can see further. And if you're not familiar with the curve calculator, something like this from that height seems possible. But when you plug those numbers in, you see that there should be well over 100 miles of curve that's missing. If we look at the refraction approximation, they say it's a little bit over 100 miles, but that's okay. That's still a lot of curve that's missing, and you shouldn't be able to see this whatsoever. And you could even almost see things in the distance, and this is thanks to the infrared filter that he was using and other camera modifications that help see things that we shouldn't. So that's what you're looking at. You can see the whole video. I'll link this video in the description so you can make your own judgments and conclusions on what you're seeing. This is definitely not a mirage. You can see that this surface is flat all the way to where we shouldn't be able to see. Nothing is being bent around a curve. It's just a flat surface here, and there are even things in the distance here that are obscured by the particles suspended in the air, as well as the moisture that's there and exists that filters out light. But if it wasn't there, if you were to remove the atmosphere that we have, this debate would be a lot easier to settle. But there's reasons we can't see too far, but getting up really high, things become a little more clear, like this picture here. And as groundbreaking as these distances are, you'll never see this in the news articles that talk about people denying proof of the globe. We don't deny them. We just are very blessed and fortunate that there are talented individuals who capture things like this on a regular basis. So Those are the long distance proofs. We've seen the curve, we've seen this. Now let's take a quick look at the pictures of Earth from space that we've all seen so many of from not just NASA, other space agencies. But here is a really good picture of that curve that you would expect to see from the ISS. And here it is from SpaceX. You can see I've put a straight line so you can tell that even if we are really dumb and don't know what straight lines are, I put one there so we could see it and go, look, yep, it is curved. The funny thing is, sometimes when the camera angle changes, the curve goes away. It has even been seen to become concave. This shouldn't happen with a curved line. And it didn't dawn on me until I remembered when I was using my GoPro camera that a straight line would do this. It would bend in both directions, but a curved line would not. I can link the experiments in the description for the sake of time so you can see it if you're interested. You cannot make a curved line do this perfectly on the outer edges with a fisheye lens. You can actually make the line change a little bit and sort of go flat in the middle, but the outer edges are the clue that this is impossible, and that if this footage is taken from a high elevation similar to the balloon footage we put out and other people put out, you don't have to be a flat earther to do balloon footage, but there's a reason that rocket launch footage only lasts a few minutes and then it cuts to an animation, or it stops entirely and then you have everyday people launching balloons and giving you hours of uncut footage, and our space agencies can't do that. They cannot show you where these things are going. Probably somewhere like Point Nemo or the Bermuda Triangle, we don't know, but they are not going into orbit at all. That's a big lie. And when regular everyday citizens send a rocket up, the highest one has ever been is 73 miles, and it came to an instant stop. It was the yo-yo despin that was given credit for that, but you can see the horizon again is flat and curved and curves in both directions, but when the camera is centered, it becomes perfectly flat and straight, and you can even see the moon that should be over Australia during the time this was taken. Lots of cool stuff that you find, and yes, we do watch space footage. Sadly, we watch more space footage now than we did in the old days, and we know a lot more about the heliocentric model than we did before we even looked into this. Not saying that with pride. I really wish I would have proven all things from the earliest age, but I had a lot of trust for the ones presenting me the information they did, because so did they. They weren't telling lies on purpose. They were just teaching me what they believed was reality from the stuff that they had seen on TV and on the news, and the news anchors believed it. And that's the easiest way to spread lies, is to get people to spread them who actually believe them. So once the curve was disproven and we saw all of the evidence for both curve and missing curve, the motion of Earth was the last thing that really needed to be disproven, because we have things like Foucault's pendulum that tell us the Earth is rotating. And I was stumped by this for a few hours until I looked into it and found out there's some really cool things that I had never even heard of and that the mainstream is unaware of, and it has to do with this pendulum here that has been set up in a lot of science museums and swings at intervals as the Earth allegedly rotates beneath it. And I was told this has nothing to do with anything above, it has everything to do with the Earth rotating below. Well, my first thought when looking into this proof was that if it is real, they should be able to put it at the North Pole and the South Pole and prove once and for all that the Earth is spinning, because it would spin one way underneath them at the North Pole and a different way at the South Pole, and it would rotate within a 24-hour period. If that happens, there's your proof. So let's look at that proof and read what happened when they went to the South Pole. Researchers did this, and on their first attempt, they say, this is their words, with the pendulum, it showed the Earth spinning backward from what was expected. We did not notice this at first because we're all from the Northern Hemisphere and are accustomed to the Earth spinning in an anti-clockwise direction. We then realized that from our frame of reference, the Earth should be spinning clockwise. So we had to modify the pendulum like a carnival trick. They had to modify it, and it says our second attempt showed the Earth rotating in the proper direction after they modified it, but at an angular velocity twice what is expected, i.e. 12-hour days instead of 24. And he said, this is something I read in the article but didn't paste. He said they thought they had uncovered some conspiracy. Okay. So he actually did, but the guy here, Mike Town, he got very adept at dropping the bob so that it arced in a plane. So in other words, Mike was the one who perfected the carnival trick, but that's not where it goes south for them entirely. There was another person who was experimenting with these, and he was doing this during an eclipse. And there's an effect named after what happens called the Elias effect. And this effect refers to an alleged anomalous behavior of pendulums or gravimeters which is observed during a solar eclipse. The effect was first reported as an anomalous precession of the plane of oscillation of a Foucault pendulum during the solar eclipse of June 30th, 1954. And this is someone who went on to win a Nobel Prize in economics, a pretty smart guy. And you would think that after this, people would start wondering, why are the luminaries above that are so far away impacting a pendulum? And how great of a degree were they affected? I was surprised to find that the change was significant. It was 13.5 degrees per 14 minutes compared to its usual 15 degrees per hour. And this is particularly surprising because the experiment was conducted indoors, away from the sunlight. So there should have been no way the eclipse could affect it. But in 1959, when there was another eclipse, he saw exactly the same effect. And he wasn't the only one. More have confirmed the results from several different locations, including an underground laboratory. And during this year's eclipse, in August, of course this is an old article, so it was talking about the one I think in 2017, NASA and other groups attempted a range of experiments to finally confirm or deny the result. Their conclusions are still awaited. Yes, we are waiting because we know what the conclusion is. What's above us, the great expanse, the firmament that we have seen, is causing these anomalies. You have the largest, most magnificent expanse above us that was created on the second day of creation, and it's no surprise that it is what is causing some of these things to happen that we believed were due to a rotating ball flying around the sun. But when you find out how a lot of these things work in the first place, it gets even more strange, as these things, especially the ones that are set up in the science museums around the world, are all designed and manufactured by one company. And listen to what they have to say. This is from a phone conversation that someone had with one of the makers of these pendulums, and this guy knows the history behind them and their design and how they work. I found this interesting when I looked into it, and the young man who did the interview asked some really good questions and received some interesting answers. So let's go ahead and take a look at what he has to say. It's quite surprising.
I want to do a video on something called a Foucault pendulum. You also hear it called a Foucault pendulum. These are pendulums that are supposed to demonstrate the spin of the Earth, but not everyone realizes that they actually have a magnetic drive plugged into electricity that keeps them moving.
So I guess the magnet drive system is what I guess keeps it spinning in the proper pattern or whatever.
Actually, no, the pattern is by the Earth's rotation.
Okay.
The magnet drive keeps it swinging back and forth the full distance.
Gotcha.
So there's actually up in the ceiling there's a 3-foot high cone that has a circular magnet. The cable swings in the center of that. Hanging on the cable is a steel donut.
Okay.
So when the cable hits dead center, it breaks the photo beam, turning on the electric magnet. Then it pulls or draws the steel donut on the cable towards the ring. It times out, and then it goes over again. So it only turns on and off for a couple of seconds. So what that does, it keeps the pendulum swinging. When you have that much weight swinging back and forth in motion, it'll stay in the same plane in space.
Okay.
but the world rotates underneath it. That's a physics demonstration.
So I'm assuming maybe the first one didn't have, you know, the little magnetic drive deal on it.
Actually it did. They had the magnetic ring. They just, the amplifier used to use tubes, and instead of photo beams, they used to actually have a magnet on the center of the ground. And then they had a magnetic ring up on the tower. So then they ran a wire from the pit all the way up to the ceiling. So once they put a magnet on the tip of the ball. So when the two magnets crossed over each other, it sent the signal to turn on the power. But it was very crude and it wasn't quite accurate, and they had to be adjusted quite often. It wasn't quite accurate, and they had to be adjusted quite often.
Sure.
And it wasn't until the 70s and 80s when they came up with the logic module and the solid state relays and stuff that we got more accurate.
So here's one last video on how ring magnets have multiple poles on them. So I don't see how it's possible that when the magnet is activated in order to keep the pendulum in perpetual motion, how those other poles don't affect the swing of the pendulum. So it's my opinion that it's these multiple poles that cause the oscillating pattern and not the spin of the Earth, but I'll let you make your own decision.
It wasn't quite accurate, and they had to be adjusted quite often. And it wasn't until the 70s and 80s when they came up with the logic module and solid state relays and stuff that we got more accurate.
So like the man said in the interview, they had to modify them to make them more accurate. Things that are already aligned with circular magnets and electronic components to keep them in motion have to have modifications to be accurate, as if the largest sphere that we've ever laid our hands and feet on rotating beneath it wouldn't cause the same result unless you modify it. It should. If you put one of these things in a plane and do a 360, it rotates at the exact same speed beneath that pendulum as the Earth should. But now that we got this one out of the way, let's look at the ring laser gyroscope. This is from the Netflix documentary where they were puzzled by what could actually make something like this detect a rotation. And again, these are only detecting Earth's slowest motion. Earth's slowest motion is its rotation. And they are saying that a pendulum detects the slowest motion and that this detects the slowest motion of Earth, its rotation. So I wanted to find out what exactly could affect this light. This experiment kind of reminded me of the Michelson-Morley experiment where they used the light beams to see if Earth was moving. So how was it that this thing detects the slowest motion of Earth? Well, there is lights in here, and the type of light that they use is neon. What's interesting about that is that the electromagnetic properties of the firmament can just as well affect that light, similar to you see this magnet here affecting the neon. Quite strange. They are using a light source that can be affected by electromagnetic or just magnetic properties in general to detect Earth's motions, when we know that these same exact properties could affect this device. And one thing that came to my mind was if the pendulum could have the Earth rotate underneath it, what about a suspended object like a balloon? Could we get a neutrally buoyant balloon to sit in a room and not move and have the Earth rotate beneath it at any degree? And when I was looking into this, I found a video from Action Labs where he did just that. He put a neutrally buoyant balloon into the air and he didn't let it sit for very long. He walked around the room and this balloon tried to follow him because of a charge. Okay? And this is a person next to a balloon. If this person could affect this balloon with his charge, how much more could the firmament and the sun and the moon affect things on Earth? If he can make this balloon that's neutrally buoyant follow him, I believe that the sun and the moon can also affect things like tides, because this balloon, if you get it charged the right way, can bend water. So as opposed to the water being lifted, we could be having something like this cause our tides to rise and fall. Even a powerful magnet can move water. Lots of cool things that are designed into creation to make things on Earth possible. If water didn't rise and fall like it did, all life on Earth wouldn't be possible. Everything's cycled. It's like a giant eco bottle. When you create these little ecosystems in a bottle, they thrive because everything cycles. The flowing of energy, the cycling of matter, it all makes this possible. Where we live was designed to last a certain time period, and then the end will come. We're getting close to that time. There's a lot of proof out there, and many of them are things we never thought of, like the humpback whales, where they can have a song of one of them heard 4,000 miles away. Yet there are what they call acoustic shadows caused by ridges undersea, and the 495 miles of curve doesn't impact that at all. And if we flash back in time to look at some of the surveys they've done of the bottom of the ocean, you can see why this is possible on a flat Earth, because if you're 4,000 miles away and you have a straight path for those waves to travel in, they'll make it if they're both near the surface. But if you dip down below these ridges, these are acoustic shadows. They can't communicate beyond those barriers, because this is what the surface of the ocean looks like according to the Geological Society of America. They did not detect the curvature when doing this, nor did they account for it. They just gave us a realistic image of what it looks like and shows us why these wells can communicate and their waves aren't going around this much curve. Little simple proofs. I will leave breakdowns of these videos in the description for you guys, because these videos and proofs are becoming harder to find, and I know that if you are interested in any way in finding answers, going to the search bar up top and typing it in is not going to give you the results you want, and that's frustrating. So we have to share everything. I encourage all of you to do that. I'm going to try to do that more often, but for now I'm going to let you make some more observations and see some of the other proofs we have, and hope that you will definitely stop believing what they're saying in the news and prove all things.